Awesome.
Hello, hello, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Thanks for joining.
Perfect. Our live streams are up and running. Just going to give everybody another minute to hop on in. If anyone has any burning questions, save them for the end because we will have a chance to ask Dr. Matthew, Dr. Caitlin some questions.
Mhm. Hello. Hello, hello, everyone.
Gonna go ahead. Awesome, Rich. Well, I think we're good to go.
Awesome, awesome. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome. We at the USAEL are so excited to kick off today's edition of the Careers in Esports webinar series.
This is the third entry in our recurring series of webinars that aims to provide students, educators, and esports enthusiasts with a unique opportunity to explore a multitude of jobs and career pathways in esports.
That's right, and you should know the deal by now. Every month we talk to a different expert from the world of esports and gaming. The roster includes professional players, coaches, game developers, tournament organizers, and a variety of others to give our listeners and students firsthand insights and expert advice on pursuing a career in the esports industry.
Our roster is full of industry veterans stemming from companies and organizations that have established a significant presence in the space, such as the ones you can see on the screen.
But let's first begin with some introductions. I'm Rich Conti.
And I'm Peter Poliglov.
And we are your recurring hosts for the Careers and Esports webinar series. Do remember to post your questions in chat so that we can answer them during the live Q&A portion at the end.
Rich, I bet you're extra excited to introduce our guest today.
That is definitely true. You can say that again, and I'm already sitting up straighter.
Would you do the
Excellent.
honors then?
Absolutely. Without further ado, it is my privilege to introduce to our audience Dr. Matthew Hwu and Dr. Caitlin McGee from Team 1HP. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah,
It is a
absolutely.
pleasure to be here and hope we can teach, everyone here a little bit more about what we do and how hopefully we can get everyone sitting up the way you have in the past 5 seconds. So, yeah, really hoping to teach everyone or just inform everyone about what we do.
For those of you who aren't familiar with 1HP, they are a team of healthcare and performance professionals on a mission to keep the gaming community as healthy as possible and performing at their absolute best. They worked with players and teams across multiple game titles from CSGO and Overwatch to League of Legends, Dota 2, and Fortnite.
Yeah, and that mission to keep the gaming community healthy is certainly a very noble goal. In a few sentences, I'm curious, could you tell us a little bit about what inspired you to create 1HP?
Yeah, I mean, um, I'm sure we'll go over this a little bit later, but I've been pretty much a gamer my entire life. I grew up competing in the original Counter-Strike, so that dates me a little bit. But even in physical therapy school, I played in class. I was the in-game leader for my team, and I would follow the esports scene pretty closely throughout my entire time there, and just would see all of these stories and um, I guess, news about players retiring or getting surgical interventions, and just thought that maybe there was a potential gap in sort of the understanding of how to work with this population. And really, after I graduated and did my own research, it just seemed to click for me as this could be a potential thing that would hopefully bridge that gap that was and still is sort of missing at the moment, which we're trying to address and in terms of the education space as it relates to esports medicine. But That was sort of the big reason why I wanted to start it. 1HP did start, truly as this physical therapy for gamers company, and then just really evolved into this complete wellness-based approach where now we do have pretty much every type of profession supporting these esports organizations that we work with. So dietitians, athletic trainers, sleep psychologists, clinical psychologists, and yeah, it's been a journey for sure.
And Caitlin, how did you and Matthew meet, and how did you kind of start collaborating in this
I
sphere?
always joke that Matt and I did not meet because of PPU. Sorry, Kevin. So I got my start slightly later in gaming than Matt did. I mostly started gaming around PT school. I had a really great system going during my clinical rotations. I would be studying for boards until I was so bored that I could no longer do so. Then I would play Guild Wars 2 until my laptop overheated, which was usually about 45 minutes. And then I'd go back to studying. So it was a really nice structure for me. And I got into the esports side of things because I started doing in-game statistics for Dota 2. And while I can't say that, like Matt, I've ever actually won money while competing for something, which he has, he's technically a professional esports competitor as a result. I can proudly say that my amateur Dota 2 league team won our division 3 years running. But my entry was through stats, and so I would be on site at tournaments. This also led to me being on site for some Super Smash Brothers tournaments, which was also a game that I played quite a bit of. Shout out to the Melee community. And one of the players that I worked with a couple times at tournaments was someone who worked with Matt on a regular basis because Matt worked with his whole team. And he kept saying, "Oh, I should totally introduce you guys. You guys would really get along." And he said that to both of us enough times without actually introducing us that we managed to find each other on Twitter, as all of us in esports are on Twitter, of course. And that's how Matt and I met. We met because we had a shared love of providing this kind of care to players, and got really excited about making things better for them.
She actually did an interview on her stream. That's how it all started. And then we just decided to work together. It was just really natural for us. Probably the most natural like combination of passions. Because she's always been on the East Coast. We met probably like halfway into the entire relationship. So or halfway into developing a lot of the things that we did together at 1HP. So it's been remote, similar to, the lifestyle of a lot of gamers, right? Where they use gaming as a central medium to meet, connect with all of their friends. It's what I really love about gaming, to be honest.
Sometimes the stars align and you find the right people and you're able just to connect, and that's really amazing. With our next slides, we're actually going to go back in time a little bit and take a look first with Dr. Hwu and then with Dr. Kate at kind of how your professional career started and what some of the highlights were. So
all right, let's see it. Ooh, yeah.
There we go. So,
I like the spin.
Thank you. Dr. Hwu, we put together a high-level overview of your career. Could you maybe comment on some of the major stepping stones that you see on the screen?
Wow, you found Methodist Hospital volunteering. That was in high school. You guys did your research. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely quite a few milestones that you guys can see here. So UC Santa Barbara, I was a biochem major, went to physical therapy school. Clearly, the physical therapy school was a large part of how I transitioned my passion of wanting to help gamers move better, stay more healthy, to eventually lead to that 1HP development of 1HP. But as you can see, the residency actually, and I think I talk about this quite a lot, but it really helped me develop a really, I think, holistic mental model in approaching patient care, because at the time we were learning a lot about how to work with chronic pain patients, especially for low back pain. And that really, really, I think, tuned me in on how to better speak to my patients, how to really think about beliefs and what we call thought viruses and how that impacts their ability and their self-efficacy and their outcomes. And so I really credit the residency for providing me with that better framework in terms of approaching just working with patients, that really, I think, gave me a leg up in how I actually began to leverage my own internal experience as a gamer myself to be able to better speak to the gamers that I worked with, right? And you guys can see on the middle of the screen, CLG, I worked for free for about 1.5 years. So the origin story was I graduated physical therapy school. I spent 1 year working in the clinic, and at that time I knew I wanted to not just work in the clinic. I wanted to do something outside of the clinic, really try to make a change. And so naturally I went to CrossFit, right? And so what I did there was I actually identified in the same way, as I did with gaming, that there wasn't as great of an on-ramp in terms of injury prevention, but realized pretty quickly when I was going to all these boxes, they weren't my people. I was going home to game every single day, and really it just became this natural transition for me where I started writing a lot of content, went to IEM San Jose in 2015, and that was how it all started. I pitched everyone at the event, and what the CEO of CLG was fortunate enough to give me the opportunity to work for free, give me that opportunity. But it was a great entry for me. I mean, that's how I think a lot of people start, because of pure passion, right? I was passionate about wanting to be able to help the gaming community stay healthy because I was a gamer, and that really just transitioned. That's again how I met you or Kevin, that also knew Kate. And so that gave me the experience of working with Smash, CSGO, League, and Overwatch very early on. So I'm always very, very thankful for those, I would say, those two experiences. Yeah, I would say probably those are the biggest stepping stones. And then when we probably hired our nutrition, head of nutrition, head of mental performance, those are the things that really, really tied it all together in being able to provide this holistic service for esports enterprises or working with esports teams. I mean, Kate was the number one thing. She's here. I have to shout her out. Of course, she actually, if it weren't for her, I don't think I would have survived. So I'm always very thankful for Kate.
Oh, and we're gonna look at Dr. Kate's career timeline right after this. But one thing I really like what you said, Matthew, is thought viruses, right? It's almost like assumptions, preconceptions, misconceptions, right? Are those all kind of synonyms?
Yeah. I mean, we know very well that beliefs, like I mentioned, impact patient outcomes, right? What you understand, the narrative that you tell yourself about anything, right, really impacts your behaviors, impacts what you do on a day-to-day basis and what you don't do. So that's really, again, that residency really tuned me in on what to say and what to consider when speaking with patients, even if it's just right lower back pain, which a lot of the times, as physicians get, I guess, fatigue with their careers after working for long periods of time, they don't really consider those things. And so I think I'm fortunate in still having that passion over these 8 years. I will always be mindful of that, especially now that I have a 2-year-old daughter. So I can never not think about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Matthew, for sharing that. Dr. Kate, if it's all right, we'll take a look at your timeline next. So similar with Dr. Hwu, we put together kind of an overview. Could you comment a little bit and talk about some of these different experiences?
Sure. Yeah. So I got my start at Ursinus College, which is a small liberal arts college in PA. I wanted to go for both neuroscience and exercise and sports science. So I went for both and accidentally ended up with a biology minor because I took too many science courses. Then went on to do my doctorate in physical therapy at the University of Delaware, which I will note is tied for the #1 PT school in the nation. We're tied with USC, but let's not talk about them. I had a fantastic experience at University of Delaware, and I really credit the education that I got there with providing me with a lot of the flexibility that I've been able to adapt in esports. Because a lot of us who go into healthcare go there because there's this really nice, straightforward path. You go to high school, you go to college, and some science-related program, you go to your graduate or doctoral program, you graduate, you enter the healthcare field, you progress up the clinical ladder. It's really nice and really well laid out for you, and it doesn't exist in esports. because there is no clear
Uh-huh.
clinical career ladder in esports. There's the infrastructure that we're building as we go to figure out what works for us. So that's definitely not what I expected to do necessarily coming out of school. But I think my experiences at UD really prepared me for that because they give us so many opportunities to try a bunch of different things, which is what I really love most about physical therapy. There's so many places you can do it. You can do physical therapy with pediatrics, with kids. You can do physical therapy in geriatric facilities with older adults. You can do physical therapy for sports and for athletes. You can do physical therapy in just standard outpatient orthopedics, your everyday folks coming in with back pain and elbow pain, shoulder pain, knee pain. You can do physical therapy for performing artists. There are physical therapists who travel with ballet companies and work for Disney. You can do physical therapy in esports. There's just so many different ways you can apply it. And I think that's why physical therapy never really feels boring. I did some clinical rotations in a bunch of different places, including in the acute care setting or the hospital setting. I also had a really interesting rotation doing brain injury rehabilitation. And one of the things that we found in brain injury rehabilitation is one of the best ways to get people to want to do things is make it fun enough to want to do things. So there's actually been some really interesting research in physical therapy about the gamification of rehab, about how we can use fun experiences as part of the rehab process, especially for our patients who've had strokes or spinal cord or brain injuries, because you perceive less fatigue and are able to participate longer and therefore have better progress when you're doing something you actually like doing. So sometimes Wii Sports are actually therapeutic. There were a couple of really great opportunities I had at the beginning of my esports career. I had a great chance to travel with Complexity for MLG Anaheim, which was a fantastic experience for me, getting to kind of see the behind the scenes a little bit more. I've had a chance to work with a number of the Smash tournaments, both here and in California, which again is very much, you got to adapt, got to be on the fly, got to be prepared for whatever players need, very much focusing on meeting people where they're at. But before the pandemic, I had a chance to work with the Knicks NBA 2K team up in New York City, which was great, both because it's really cool to see how some of the NBA teams have invested in their esports programs, and also because it meant I got New York pizza every time I traveled up there. Both are good. As a resident New Jerseyan originally, I have a strong love of good pizza. Matt does not understand why I tell him that all of the LA pizza is bad. But it
I
is.
mean, I've had New York pizza. It's pretty amazing. So I agree. I
Yeah.
agree.
I originally started out kind of managing stuff on my own. I had my little tagline of play more, hurt less. And then I had the opportunity to meet Matt, and we decided absolutely 2 heads are better than one. Let's go at this together. It's now like 8 heads are better than one because, as Matt said, it's not just PTs at 1HP anymore. It's also registered dietitians, athletic trainers. We've had occupational therapists. We've had clinical psychologists and sleep psychologists. We have personal trainers as well. And so all of that really lets us, again, do what we want to do, which is meet players where they're at, help them stay healthy, and even improve performance. And then more recently, in the last 2 years, we launched one of the things that I'm most excited about, which is our Esports Health and Performance Institute, which is a continuing education platform. It does have a certification attached to it. I understand that an esports certification is not necessarily a word people like hearing. We've had a whole bunch of money grab ones, which is why we really wanted to make sure when we made this continuing education platform, it was tied to something that had real world value. So our courses, for example, offer continuing education credits for physical therapists, athletic trainers, and we're working on the certification for OTs as well. Which means that it contributes towards the renewal of their licensure, because every 1 to 2 years, you have to take so many additional classes to keep up your knowledge. And our classes count towards that, which I think is pretty neat.
Yes, it is.
That is super neat.
Sounds like you two have had a chance to work with some amazing people, and you have some great people working on your team. And we'll definitely would love to learn more about what you do at 1HP and the Esports Health and Performance Institutes further in our webinar. But I think we're actually ready to rotate to our very first question, believe it or not.
Sure.
So we'll go ahead and I'll pass it over to Rich.
Sure, yeah. So starting with Caitlin, we're going to go back. So it's clear that both for Caitlin, you and Matt, choosing this path. You said the easy path of, or the easily laid out path of physical therapy, was an early choice. So I guess what made you pursue that path in the first place?
There were really two things for me. Thing number one was I was and still am an athlete. So I had a number of injuries that I got treated by physical therapists, and I really loved the process and the extent to which it wasn't about someone telling you what to do or being in charge of your care and you just blindly following along, but that it was an interactive and participatory process. It was, I have to put in the work and I have to understand why I'm doing it. Which is, shout out to gamers. Of all the populations we've worked with, this is the group that consistently asks the most questions and wants to learn the most about what's going on and why we're doing it. The other big thing for me was I had a chance to shadow a physical therapist at Shriners Children's Hospital in Philadelphia. And I saw a 10-year-old girl with cerebral palsy take her first ever independent steps. And the thing that really struck me about it wasn't so much that one particular moment, which was very cool, don't get me wrong, there was not a dry eye in the room, but that it was such a process. It was a thing that she'd been working on for so many years, and a thing that PTs had been working on with her for so many years. The idea that we can work on something over years and years and years to build it up, to make it matter to someone. That was what really struck me. Not the one moment of I've done it, but all of the moments of we're working our way there.
Mm-hmm.
And Matt, what about you? Why did you choose to pursue a career in physical therapy?
I mean, to really just re-highlight that same idea, right? Like ultimately the goal is, how do we help people restore their self-efficacy? How do we help them return to what they love to do? And I have always been pretty active throughout my entire life, even though I was a pretty big gamer. So, I was in band. We can kind of consider that active because I was in marching band. But I also used to teach like competitive or hip hop dance, and also played a lot of sports on the side, mainly basketball. But it really did expose me, not actually directly to physical therapy, but it just made me a lot more in tune with my own body. It made me more fascinated with just biomechanics, physiology. And then when I actually began to explore the career path, it was everything that Kate had mentioned in terms of what I was able to observe. But also too, I love connecting with people, and I always mention that, we're sort of the barbers of the healthcare industry, and that we get to really spend so much time with our patients. And that's really rare, right? We really are able to develop these pretty great and deep relationships with our patients, which makes it so much more satisfying to say that, wow, I helped this person return to, being a weekend warrior, or being able to do this marathon, or being able to game again for after they come home from work as a software engineer, and they want to be able to play, but because of their wrist pain, it affects their ability to game and a little bit of their productivity at work, right? So those are all the things that, I was able to see, obviously, in terms of observing, but just being a part of it, it's been amazing, right? Like that's why I still continue to love it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Kate, Dr. Matthew. We're gonna move on to our next question. And this one is a fun one. What role has gaming played in your life? And we're gonna start with Dr. Kate.
So like I said, gaming very much did help keep me from absolutely breaking down during clinical rotations. It was such a great outlet and such a great way to connect with people. I think for all of us, gaming is a very social thing. And it gave me an opportunity to meet a whole bunch of folks I never would have met otherwise. Plenty of whom I'm still good friends with. It's a particularly entertaining experience to meet people that you've only heard their voices, and you can't recognize them until they start talking. So that was a big part of it for me, the social aspect, but also just discovering a new area of ways to have fun. I'm a huge reader. I love reading. I like crafting. I like doing things. I like participating in the thing that is happening. And games are stories that you get to participate in, which is pretty fun, and also probably why I love D&D.
I can connect with you right there regarding the Dungeons and Dragons. I love D&D. But jumping over to you, Matthew, same question. What role has gaming played in your life?
Yeah, I mean, I think I definitely mentioned it a little earlier, but it's always been a pretty big part of my life. One, as a social aspect, and then two, I'm a really competitive person, so it allows me to channel that competitiveness into the ranked grind, as I think many maybe listeners or the students or even the teachers that are exposed to the gaming environment have a deep understanding of. But that's why gaming has, I think, is such a great channel for both socialization and competitiveness, and it gives all of us an opportunity to create a unique environment to learn certain things. But yeah, I mean, it's just been such a big part of my life, and I love competing. So I've always competed a little bit throughout my entire life, although not at the highest level at certain periods. But as Kay mentioned, there were some times, the first World Cup for Fortnite, I did make $500. So I am a professional.
Technically a professional, you have made money off of it.
I am a professional, so I can always say that now, but um yeah, it's just such a great medium for me to still stay connected with some of my closest friends, and yeah, some people that I only know through gaming. I love that.
Awesome. Rich, did you have any follow-up questions for Kate or Matthew?
Are you guys playing any games right now?
I think I'm
Yes.
finally beginning to break my Baldur's Gate 3 addiction.
Ooh.
That's a
It
good one.
took at least 4 playthroughs before that I could say that.
Oh, wow.
But of course, it's a D&D video game. Of course, I'm gonna
Yeah.
love it. I've also been really liking cozy games recently, just like stuff that's like relaxing and kind of chill. There's a game that's in beta right now called Palia that I've really liked. And then of course, still playing Dota, still playing Guild Wars. Guild Wars is probably where I get my high skill fix these days because I raid. I do tune in for the World of Warcraft Race to World First. It's always interesting to see how different games do raiding and dungeon systems. But I really enjoy raiding in Guild Wars 2, and is entirely appropriate as a physical therapist that my primary role in raiding is healer.
Nice. Raiding is definitely very fun. It's very fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
I haven't been playing any games where there are raids recently. Just Fortnite or League of Legends actually for me. So always some sort of competitive game. I do want to play or replay Super Mario RPG because I played so much of that when I was younger. Probably like replayed it 10 to 12 times with my brother. So I am really excited to see and just replay the entire game again on the Switch. But for now, it's still the competitive games. I just have to get that itch to compete. And I am playing more golf now, which I do eventually want to transition into some sort of competitive or participate in some competitions. But for now, gaming satisfies that.
Dr. Kate actually brought up an interesting point. Dr. Matt, do you play support characters as well in games more often, or how does that work?
I'm probably not actually, surprisingly. I always play sort of the in-game leader type of role. That's just sort of where I gravitate towards. I tend to, even just my personality wise, I tend to like to zoom out and like look at the macro a lot, and so I think that's it really is aligned with my personality in terms of I think I think I have a decent understanding of games when I play, but yeah, I think that's based on my personality, the type of role that I tend to gravitate towards.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And actually, that kind of leads into our next question, which is why connect gaming to health and wellness? And I'm actually kind of curious as well, or it might be a good point to bring up to all of our students, not only why connect gaming to health and wellness, but why is health and wellness so important in gaming? Because when you're young, everything feels great. You could play games for hours.
You're
Um,
invincible.
you're invincible. Yeah, you have that star power up. But yeah, maybe we'll start with Dr. Matt this time.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is sort of the perception that we always hear about, the gaming lifestyle, which I think is partially true for, especially, I guess, previously, in that, hey, there's a lot of physical inactivity. Maybe they play and don't even really participate in sports, even though, I did myself. But just overall, I think sometimes it can lend itself to unhealthy habits. So you really have to be intentional about how you approach, interacting with, I guess, competitive gaming or gaming in general, to be mindful of your overall health. And a lot of the times, just because we don't deal with any sort of discomfort or pain, it doesn't mean it's the right approach, which is why it is helpful to provide this level of education early on. That's always been our mission, to be able to very early teach gamers that, hey, you can adopt these habits so you never really have to deal with these issues as you do get older. But it's always interesting to see that, hey, these 16, 17-year-olds that spend so much time playing these games can still develop some issues. And a lot of the times they're just not aware, right, that what they're feeling and why, what their behavior is around gaming is actually leading to some of the symptoms that they feel. And once you sort of connect those dots for them, then they really begin to understand. And which is why we have to put the context around, like what's shown here on the slide. Like we love to utilize like contextual based learning to actually help them understand in a frame of reference that they already know, as gamers, hey, how is this affecting your health bar or your overheating meter? And that really allows them to just better understand why what they do and actually impacts their health and wellness.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the things that's great about gaming is it's such a fantastic platform for so many different things. One of the things it's a great platform for is improving healthy behaviors, which is not what we all think of necessarily. I think there's a lot of thought viruses around gaming as being a thing that leads you down a path of sedentary and unhealthiness. And it could, certainly. But at the same time, it can also be a kind of a motivator for something that would make you want to have healthier behaviors. Because as you're working with players and as you're helping them understand, the impact that getting 8 solid hours of sleep, whatever time it is, but 8 solid hours consistently, what kind of impact that has on their ability to process and understand the game, what kind of impact their nutrition has on, their feelings of awakeness and alertness consistently throughout a whole tournament day, what kind of impact physical activity has on their feelings, like, their hands don't become as fatigued anymore. As they start to recognize those things, the game itself and getting better at it is a motivation to continue participating in these healthy behaviors. So it can really be self-perpetuating. The social aspect of it is also really helpful, both in terms of, if you get a whole group of people that are doing a thing together, especially within the context of a team, sometimes shared suffering builds, a team spirit. If you're having to go through a tough workout together, it does make you feel like more of a group. But also the peer pressure aspect. If, the expectation from your teammates is you're also going to be as hydrated as I am, then, oh, look, you've peer pressured each other into behaving healthily, which is one of the positive ways that can be used. And creating those support structures is really valuable, as valuable out of game as in game. And I think gaming really gives a great opportunity for that. I think also the part of the reason why we really wanted to work on health and performance and all of these areas in gaming specifically is because, especially at high levels in esports, folks want that edge. Folks want to know what thing is going to make me 1% better than my opponent. I can practice a lot. I can grind for hours, but there's a point of diminishing returns and everybody knows it. The point of diminishing returns probably comes a lot sooner than a lot of pro players think, but once you've gotten past that point of just playing the game, what other things can I do that are going to make me slightly better than the guy next to me, that are going to give me the edge that I need? And so there's this curiosity and there's this interest and there's this desire to be the best they possibly can. And it was really great to be in a position to help support that as Matt and I were starting to get into esports and continuing now. it's not just us anymore. When Matt and I got started in esports, there was about 2 PTs, maybe 1 orthopedic doctor, and I think there was like Marina over in Europe who was doing the psychology side of things.
Mm-hmm.
And over the past 10 years or so, we've seen such an explosion in the availability of healthcare professionals and performance science professionals who both can and want to support the growth of gaming and esports. We certainly need more of them, though. So I'm really glad that folks are tuning into this particular webinar. And hopefully, if you've been thinking about, health, wellness, performance science type careers, if that's something you're interested in, recognizing that esports is an area that you can apply that in, I think is really valuable.
Absolutely. I was also, I'm sorry to cut you off, Richie. I was going to say, based on what you were saying earlier, it almost seems like you two are working to gamify being healthy and gamify performing at your best in gaming or in esports. So I just think that's really, really cool.
Yeah, that's tons of fun. There was a Hearthstone streamer that I watched who would do 10 push-ups every time he would lose a game, just that little bit of gamification, right?
Oh yeah, no, there's so much fun stuff you can do with streaming too. There's a lot of streamers who have a hydration command in their channel now. There are streamers who have a stretch command. It's a way to build community pressure, but it's also a way to remind yourself of healthy behaviors, and your peers are holding you accountable for taking care of yourself, which I think is great.
That's awesome. I think that's a pretty good segue into our next question as well. Kind of in a way, a culmination of a lot of your work. Could you tell us a little bit more about your work at 1HP, and starting with you, Matt, what inspired you to build this company?
Yeah, I mean, I think I already mentioned it a little earlier, but basically just being able to combine my passion of being able to help people move better, live better, and really applying that to my own community or the gaming community. And that, yes, we did start as this physical therapy for gamers company. So when we did start, it was me just helping some of the teams over at CLG adopt really basic habits of stretching, beginning to exercise more regularly, addressing some of their issues that they had. And it's not always, wrist, hand, shoulder. Sometimes they decide to go-karting. Sometimes they decide to play basketball and hurt their knees, right? And so there are a lot of situations in which we just treat and handle regular orthopedic issues, but at the highest level to a point where it doesn't affect their ability to play. And so, I did notice that at the time, CLG, they had this chef, who they also have continued to have the chef over now their NRG. But it really made me think a lot more about how can I actually build a better and more comprehensive structure for these esports organizations. And that's when we began to include all these other professionals and develop this system for esports organizations to assess their players at the beginning of the season and then work with them throughout the season to achieve specific goals. And then at the end of the season, assess to see what we are able to achieve and have data tracked along the entire way so that, we can, us as well as the coaches, as well as management, can make informed decisions about their players, the individuals, and even potentially roster decisions, right? And so there's a lot left to be done for the industry. And I think clearly right now with the recession, it's sort of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. We're sort of at this 1 step back at the moment. But that's the one part of our company, and then only in the last year, as you guys know, we have our Esports Health and Performance Institute, which I think Kate can definitely speak a lot more to. But that's how we educate future providers on how they can actually work with this population. What lifestyle, what things do they need to understand to be able to actually speak with patients or speak with gamers, so that when they do go to the doctor doesn't just say, don't do that, or stop gaming, or put on a brace, or here, just take some medication, come back in 2 weeks and we'll see if it gets better. Instead, they can ask more thoughtful questions about their lifestyle, and maybe hopefully provide some better recommendations, down the line. That's our ultimate goal. And And I think the last part of our business that is more recent, just the past 3 months, is our healthcare platform, which is us really beginning to provide direct access to physical therapy, fitness specialists, as well as dietitians, at sort of this cheaper or more affordable than traditional healthcare price, and at sort of the subscription model approach, so that, again, all gamers and even desk workers can have access to physical therapists that really, or healthcare providers that understand their lifestyle. That's been a really big push for us recently, to be able to address this access gap that I think has been prevalent and is continuing to be a large issue in the healthcare space.
Yeah, I know we've talked a bit about how we want to make sure that we're providing education for gamers to help them be a little bit more health literate. At the same time, we want to provide gaming education for healthcare professionals to make them a little more gaming literate. When a physical therapist or an athletic trainer works with a traditional sports team, they do it with a degree of familiarity of how that sport works and what the biomechanics of that sport are, and what kind of things someone needs to be able to do to compete in that sport, and what kind of pressures they'll be under, and what their schedule looks like. There's no reason that esports shouldn't be treated the same way. Now, there is plenty of debate about whether or not esports is actually a sport, and whether or not esports competitors are actually athletes, which I think is just a huge red herring. I talked a while back about one of the places that physical therapists often work is in the performing arts arena. And we don't actually need to debate whether or not, ballerinas are actually athletes or not, in order to understand that they've got unique and specific performance demands that PTs can help them meet. Same thing goes for esports, and same thing goes for the non-competitive parts of gaming. There are unique biomechanical performance demands that physical therapists can help players avoid injury while doing, recover from injury if they're experiencing it, and improve kind of the efficiency of their movement to get better at what it is they're doing. And so we work in kind of all of those areas at 1HP. It's been really great to see over the past couple of years the progress that the gaming industry has had, from this idea of physical therapy as, oh yeah, I only call them when I'm already injured, to, oh wait, maybe I could use them to prevent getting injured, to, I bet I could work with them to make my, build my endurance, to make myself click faster, to improve my reaction time. And the answer is yes to all of those things, especially when we're working in conjunction with other health and performance science peers. So it's been really great to see that growth on the gaming side of things. We want to make sure we're seeing the same growth on the healthcare side of things, that we are in a position to support, the 50 million plus Americans who are gamers at a competitive or at a casual level.
That's a great answer. Yeah, thank you both. One of the questions I had was, what does like a day-to-day sort of look like at your company? Like, what percentage of time would you say you spend at an arena with teams, in that sense?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. You want to think of it as in terms of seasons, right? So in terms of esports, depending on the game title, typically around this time, it's considered preseason. Some leagues start sooner, like in December or early December. For example, Call of Duty is going to be starting soon. And so being able to prep teams by performing their preseason assessments during that time, we actually have to go into facilities and meet with the players and interview them and establish the baseline of their nutrition, their lifestyle, their sleep, their mental health, and deliver all that information to esports organizations or whatever organization we're working with, collegiate, and hopefully in the future high schools, at I guess at the right time, depending on their club. But it means that on a weekly basis in season, we're meeting regularly with the players across various teams. Some can be remote, some can be in person. And then we're also doing our B2B services. We're creating content, we're educating, we're working with other organizations on delivering specific projects, being at events when necessary to actually create on-site support for whether it be the competitors or just attendees that are going to be at the event, to educate them more on, hey, you're here as a viewer or a fan of this esports title, but you clearly have to play a lot yourself to want to be able to participate or be here. So how can we teach you an avid fan to stay healthy as well. And hopefully having it, we always say this top down and bottom up approach of working with the community and the professionals, it'll move the needle forward in terms of understanding, how to become a bit more healthy or how to adopt better habits around gaming. But I would say the day-to-day changes pretty frequently in the off season. There's always going to be something that we prioritize, absolutely. So, but a lot of it is remote. Clearly with Kate, still being on the East Coast, but with esports teams being centralized here in Los Angeles, at least a large majority of them, and then I guess some in like Texas, and with Overwatch League before there was this trend, or there was the potential for there to be like localization of these esports teams, and that was exciting. And I think hopefully in the future it can get back to a point where that's more viable financially. But I think it sort of matches that lifestyle where, hey, in season we're going to be pretty busy working and being present at the office, but out of season we're preparing for the next season for them, or there's off-season tournaments sometimes, and it might mean we're working with some of the players, like I am still right now preparing a lot of these Valorant players going to the next season to ensure they're healthy, to build up their endurance, to establish some healthy habits so that when you're in season you're just maintaining those things.
Yeah, we joke a lot in physical therapy that the answer we have to give, how long is it going to take me to recover from this injury? What does my recovery timeline look like? Am I going to be able to do this, that, or the other thing again? The answer that we give all the time is, it depends. It's also the answer I have to give to, what does your standard day look like? It depends. Depends on whether or not we're in season. It depends on kind of who we're working with that day. For me, over on the East Coast, because I do a lot more of our remote work, some of my days look like I meet with a bunch of the schools that we work with, and then I'm working on a contract that we're developing. Some days look like a couple of telehealth appointments, followed by working on some new content for our continuing education platform. Some days look like, working on the presentation that we'll be doing at our national conference next year. Some days look a little bit more like observing, videos of players and checking for biomechanics. Some days look like providing education to healthcare professionals and running a seminar. So the answer is, it really depends. And even for our folks on the West Coast who do work more directly with teams than I get to, it still depends so very much, which again is what I like about PT. There's never exactly just one thing that you have to do with it. There's a whole bunch of things that you can do with it.
That's awesome. Yeah. Keeping it exciting.
That's for sure.
Oh, it's definitely exciting.
It's also cool that you get to work so closely with schools that you're able to call them and work with them in that way. And actually that kind of segues us into our next question, which is for some of these students who may be interested in pursuing a career in sports physical therapy, what might be your advice? And maybe we'll start with Dr. Kate.
So the biggest thing that I would encourage people to do, especially in high school, is if you have a chance, do some shadowing. Find a couple PT clinics near you, and ask them if you can just shadow for a day, follow around a physical therapist and see what it is they're doing. You'll get a lot of insight into kind of what a day-to-day looks like in certain settings by doing that. You can also ask around for independent private clinic settings. You could call up a hospital and see if they allow shadowing. Not all of them do, but some of them do. You could take a look at school-based physical therapy and ask if you're allowed to shadow a school-based physical therapist for a day or so. Getting some experience, taking a look at what it actually looks like on a regular basis is great. Then you want to start looking, when you're looking at colleges, you're looking for some kind of STEM-based program. You don't have to do a pre-med degree. You don't have to do just bio. Like I said, I went into neuroscience and exercise and sports science. I'd also really highly recommend, if you're interested in physical therapy, keep your mind open to some of the non-PT things that you can do with this kind of background. There's a lot of folks that we work with, kinesiologists, athletic trainers, personal trainers, registered dietitians, speech therapists, occupational therapists, physiatrists, orthopedic surgeons. There's so many different things that you can do with this background in physical medicine and rehabilitation So as you're taking those classes, be open to the idea of, I might find something else that I really love doing with this too. Those are kind of the two biggest things to start with. But keep in mind what kind of sciences you actually like, and also be prepared for the fact that even if you don't love chemistry, it is going to be one of your prerequisites. Get your chem prereqs out of the way early.
That's good. I mean, I really don't have much to add. I think you covered all of it, right? Like, you really want to spend some time developing an understanding of what the field looks like, reach out to individuals like ourselves to ask us questions, attend some of these things like you are now to really learn what the day-to-day looks like, but really be able to observe it yourself to see if that's the type of lifestyle that you really want for your future profession. I really don't think there's anything else. Yeah, like get your chemistry prereqs early on.
Take your chemistry prereqs at a community college. It will save you lots of money.
That's true. That's very true. I was a biochem major, so I ended up just taking all of them in
I will
undergrad.
also say, like, most of us who got into this field, we love answering specific questions. Don't message a physical therapist and be like, can you tell me about physical therapy? Come up with specific things that you want to answer, and people will be real excited to answer them. There's lots of physical therapy folks on Twitter who will happily answer questions. Feel free to do that, like literally anytime. I will also recommend, if you're ever looking into research, especially physical therapy research, and there's something that's behind a paywall and you can't access it, take a look for the corresponding author on that paper, shoot them an email. We love sharing our research. We get really annoyed at paywalls. If you email us and ask for a copy of the paper, we will send it to you for free. Same thing goes for teachers. Teachers, if there's ever research that you want access to, yes, you can use Sci-Hub, or you could also just email us and we'll happily send you information.
Exactly. Yeah, awesome. I think that's one of my pet peeves. Don't just reach out and say, hey, can I ask you some questions? Be a bit more thoughtful. Like, hey, I've taken the time to really evaluate and understand a little bit about physical therapy. I had really specific questions about gaming. I noticed you did this and this and this. I wanted to inquire a bit more about that. Right? Those, if you take the time, we'll be able to see that you took the time, and we'll respond in kind, right? That, hey, I appreciate that you took the effort to actually identify some of the things that I've done, and I will respect that and I will respond to that. Versus, hey, can we talk? Which has happened many times. Just the straight up, hey, can we talk? Which I haven't responded to yet. So I've also said sure, and then I wanted to see what they would say, and they did end up not responding. So be thoughtful about how you approach physical therapists. We're always open to wanting to speak, since that is a large part of our profession, as I mentioned.
Absolutely. And I think that actually kind of segues into our last question. A little bit maybe more abstract, but why do you think schools today should support their students' love for gaming?
So there's a really great chart that I want to share, which I will send to you guys, and hopefully you'll be able to post as well. It's put together by Dr. Nico Bessoms, who's a French researcher in gaming and esports. And it just shows the sheer breadth of careers that are associated with gaming and esports. And from a purely pragmatic perspective, I think one of the reasons that schools should support their students' love for gaming is the number of career fields it opens them up to by participating in this area. But I think even more importantly than just, the productive and job-focused side of things, this is an area where people have a passion. I think it's one of the most important things that anyone can do anywhere in their life at any stage is find things that they get excited about. The world needs people who are excited about the things that they are doing. And if you found something that you enjoy doing that lets you connect with other people, that opens up new pathways, new networks, new possible careers for you, that's absolutely a thing that schools should be encouraging. And especially knowing that it isn't going to necessarily tie their students back or restrict them in terms of healthy behaviors. Recognizing that just like any other extracurricular activity, this can be part of, to quote the ads, part of a healthy and balanced breakfast. Recognizing that gaming can be part of a healthy and whole life, I think schools have a really unique opportunity to support that, and to allow those students to develop their passion, to get excited about things, and to learn a whole bunch of new stuff along the way.
Yeah, well, I think you summed it up very, very well. I think the only thing that I would add is, as you have on the slide here, it creates a really unique platform and opportunity and environment to learn. right? There are these Minecraft education competitions where, when I was in high school, I did robotics competitions, and it was one of the most memorable moments for me to learn and spend time with my friends and have an environment where we're able to, socialize and compete and learn all at the same time, right? And so gaming is, as Kate mentioned earlier, is a great platform for that. And I just feel sometimes a little envious, right? I went recently to UCLA versus USC, this thing called California Rivalries. We were participating in terms of hosting a booth there, and it was just so amazing to see that actual event supported by the school, hosted at an auditorium within the school, all these students being able to just show up and watch esports, watch competition. I was the guy in my dorm playing, and everyone was like, "What are you doing?" You know, it was sort of so questioned back then, and being able to just have that opportunity to be able to openly, you know, dive into your passions with other students and even create an opportunity for a career path. I'm so happy that this is now a thing, and also so happy that I can impact it in any way. And so I'm really happy and hoping that schools really see and identify gaming as this great channel and platform for teaching and providing students with and empowering students to learn everything about their health, their wellness, STEM. Gaming is the best.
Dr. Matt, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Yeah, my gaming club was putting my PlayStation in my backpack and bringing it to school,
Right.
And I do want to shout out here some of the videos that are on the 1HP YouTube as well. There's some really interesting content there. So for any schools or students interested in, how to make gaming healthier, do check out 1HP and their YouTube channel as well.
And it's also very clear to me that with the work that you do, you're not only focused on, helping treat issues and treat problems, but also helping to educate the current and future generations of gamers preventative measures to not develop those issues or those problems in the first place. So big thank you to you, Dr. Matthew and Dr. Caitlin, for doing the great work that you do and for joining us here today.
Absolutely.
I know we're really getting close on time. We had, I think, just one or two questions in chat. So maybe for the last minute, we can rotate over to a very quick Q&A, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Sure.
So I know we got a couple questions in Zoom and we've got a couple on our live streaming channels. But the very first thing that I would like to ask for any of our schools, any of our teachers, students out here today that want to find out more about what you do, what is the best way for them to get in touch, to reach out to you, to find out more?
So we do have a contact form on our website. You can reach
yeah.
out to us through that. You can also absolutely reach out to us through LinkedIn if you're joining us on there, or on Twitter if you are also fellow terminally online folks. Matt is HP for Gamers, and I'm Kate McGee PT. So we're fairly easy to find, and we're always happy to talk about school programs in particular.
Yeah, feel free to email us as well if that's your preference for communication. But yeah, all those channels are totally appropriate. TikTok, if you want. Hey, I'm on TikTok, HP for Gamers as well. If you guys want to see some of the short form based content. I have a little bit more fun on there, so you guys can see that.
That's awesome. Thank you. And for everyone in attendance, we'll be sending out an email with a link to Dr. Matt's and Dr. Kate's website as well. One more question we got actually at the very beginning of the webinar. What role does meditation and mindfulness play in esports and gaming? Is it being embraced by the community as a tool for wellness and performance?
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
There's definitely a big focus on the mental aspects of gaming, and the kind of the role that cognition and focus play in your ability to do really well. I think, and this is anecdotal, but I do think that there's a much larger neurodivergent population represented in gaming than necessarily in non-gaming spaces. So for some folks, the traditional model of sit still and breathe doesn't necessarily work. So there are definitely things that we've done that are meditative without being the traditional sit still and count your breathing. You can do moving meditations. You can do focused breathing exercises. You can do what's called NSDR, non-sleep deep rest exercises. And so, yes, absolutely, there's a huge focus on focus, but the form that it takes definitely varies a bit from player to player and team to team.
I don't really have anything to add to that. Yeah. I mean, exactly what I would have said.
Awesome. Dr. Matt, I do have a question for you then.
Sure.
What do you think are some of the most important healthy habits for gaming?
Wow, that's hard to say. I would say, one of the foundations that we always speak of is sleep. And I think one thing that a lot of people maybe get wrong or misunderstand about sleep is that if you're trying to address your sleep, 1 to 2 hours before bed, it's already way too late. It starts with the moment you wake up, it starts with the structure of your day, it starts with how much light you get. And it's really sort of parallels with us having to just be more mindful overall with how we approach our lifestyle. It kind of starts in terms of being able to plan out your day, understanding that you have this regular bedtime and wake time, but sleep really is probably the biggest foundation for us in terms of making sure that all of their physiologic systems work well. If they don't sleep well, a lot of these other issues can either persist or it can increase sensitivity of issues relating to pain. So I would say sleep is probably the largest focus for us initially, but everyone's a bit different. Everyone has different issues. It depends, as Kate says. So, but that's what we like to focus on initially for some teams and groups of individuals.
Awesome. Well, I think that's all the time we have here today. I know we're right over the 1 hour mark. So once again, big thank you to Dr. Matthew Hwu and Dr. Caitlin McGee from Team 1HP. Thank you so much for joining us here today. I know our students and educators appreciate it.
Thank you so much, guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah.
Rich,
Thanks, everyone.
You want to play us out?
Sure. Thank you everybody for being here on another edition of the Careers in Esports webinars. Hope everybody has a great night and happy gaming.